Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Welcome to our meeting today on April 9th. We will take a moment of silence to reflect your prayer. Okay, we have the couple team today. Our flag salute is with Deborah Lynch, and our forward test is with Ron Lynch.
Please join me in the flag salute. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me for the core list of the things we think, say, or do.
Is the truth, is it fair to all concerned, will it build goodwill and better friendships, will it be beneficial to all concerned.
Yes, okay. All right, have a seat. Just to remind you, we are recording today for our YouTube channel, Norman Rotary Club, so feel free to watch that whenever you want. We have an easy thing today. There are no guests that I'm aware of. Am I missing anyone? We have students of the month for April, but they have not attended yet, so. Okay. Then just a few announcements. Did anyone, I need to put out cards. Did anyone have a remembrance card for Dennis? I'll put some out at the table. The celebration of life is next weekend, so I would need to collect those by the 16th. We've just been asked to write some thoughts or experiences or some funny story that you have about Dennis, and that will be given to the family at the celebration of life. So let me know if you have something that you would like me to collect, but I'll put out cards over there. Take them with you, but just be sure you bring them back next week. District conference is starting tomorrow. Woo! And if you have not registered and would like to go, I'm pretty sure there's a QR code floating through here. I would encourage you to do so, especially if you're newer to the club. It's a great way to learn more about Rotary, to meet people in our district. So if you have time this weekend, there are activities Friday, Saturday night is the banquet. So even if you have busy days Friday and Saturday but would like to join us for dinner on Saturday night, I think you could still do that. So scan the QR code and join us if you can. We also have another banquet, which is tomorrow night. That is the NPS Celebration of Excellence banquet. We do have a table full. One more? It's not too late. If you would like to go to that and you do not have a ticket, we have one for you. Our Rotary Club purchased a table, so you can basically attend for free if you have an open Friday night. Just see Stephen. So I do want to take a minute. We talked a little bit last week about Storypalooza, so I want to. Oh, great. Brigitte, you're in. Okay, awesome. I do want to take a minute to again recognize all of the hard work from our committee members. I appreciate so much the support from our club in general, but there are a few people on the committee who work extra hard to make this happen, and I'm very, very grateful for all of them. So, if you are a Storypalooza committee member, please stand up. I have something for you. These are mugs that we have donated by Simple Modern, and we have the logo etched on them. We're going to stainless steel, fellow Rotarian, and we gave them in hospitality baskets to being an author at Story of Palooza, she finally gets her blue badge. So. She's more than earned that. So, okay. I'm going to turn this over to Rob Andrew, and he's going to introduce our guest speaker. I do think that we have a visitor that came in. Yes?
We're waiting for her son.
Okay. All right. We will revisit that before we break today. So, okay. Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Liz. So we're in for a real treat here today. Our speaker is not too much of a stranger. He was here last month as my guest, Dr. James Collard. I'm going to read his bio here. He has over 3 decades of experience in economic and industrial development in both the public and private sectors. He currently serves as Vice Chair of the International Intertribal Trade and Investment Organization and on the Board of Directors for the Forum for International Trade Training. There's going to be a lot on economics and trade here, and so if those of you like me who don't know enough about it, you're going to get an education today. He is a fellow and served for 8 years on the Board of Directors for the International Economic Development Council. During his 17-year tenure with the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, he conceived, designed, and led the team that developed the Iron Horse Industrial Park, the first foreign trade zone on Native American trust land with activated sites. Dr. Collard has been a featured speaker during multiple World Indigenous Business Forums, and for the last 10 years has served as a professor of practice in the graduate program in regional and city planning at OU. He is an acknowledged subject matter expert on foreign trade zones and has significant experience in developing industrial parks. He recently formed Collard and Associates Trade Consultancy. His practice centers on assisting privately held companies and indigenous communities engaged in the global economy. So please join me in welcoming Jim back here as a speaker. Welcome, Jim.
Is it okay if I don't use it? Can you hear me okay? Well, thank you for having me. I've got a lot of ties to Norman. Ken Hurdle, some of you may know him, he's one of my best friends. And been over here quite a bit. Rob and I have known each other now for over a decade. So thank you. It's been a real treat for me to join you the last 2 months. I was a Rotary a long time ago, but ran out of time, I think, to do it. So I think we'll just jump in real quick. Oh, good. Okay. One of my clients right now is Foreign Trade Zone 106. We're based in downtown Oklahoma City, but it's part of the Oklahoma City Port Authority at the Royal Rogers Airport. Now, very quickly, a foreign trade zone is simply a specific location within the United States that's eligible, the companies are eligible for tax and tariff exemptions, and I'll explain those in a moment. Legislation that created foreign trade zones was 1934. It was in response to the Somali legislation that already took the Great Recession to the Great Depression, and actually delegated quite a bit of authority in terms of making creating tariffs from Congress, where it resided up to that point, to the president. And our current president, and no, I'm not in agreement with these policies, is using one of those sections, 122. We can get into that perhaps later. The guiding purpose of foreign trade zones is essentially to level the playing field for U.S. and any company located in the United States. Really, this is nothing new. Of course, humans have been trading long distances long before the creation of nation states. Currency systems have been in place along with barter systems as the human species developed over time. Regulations of conduct were very well defined, and production has always been geared toward customers. Now, again, my focus is on indigenous international trade, and I'm working with an organization where we are trying to create mechanisms whereby indigenous people can trade directly across international boundaries.
I had the privilege to give that talk day before yesterday at the Kennedy School at Harvard, and it was well received. I'm hoping I can put some of their help on that. We'll see. There's a little immersion there. I'm not quite to do that. So let's talk about the basics. What is really a foreign trade zone? They are secure areas within the United States. They're essentially a hole within the commerce of the United States. Now, there are approximately a little under 200 of them that are active, over 500,000 workers, and in more than 1,200 active foreign trade zone operations. Now, the foreign trade zone concept is a geography. It is X number of acres within an industrial park or particular building, but you move from there to activated sites, and that's the square footage where the commerce and the change of product classifications actually take place, which is what makes this work. Okay? An underlying concept, of course, Bob is well familiar with this, is the notion of comparative advantage. Foreign trade zones acknowledge that as kind of a baseline, and then work from there. Okay? It really does provide a competitive advantage for the companies, both U.S. and foreign owned, over there. So what are the benefits? To the region, it's more jobs. As market expands. This is a really solid business expansion, retention expansion, by helping companies expand the product line outside our U.S. boundaries. Again, by doing so, it brings more revenue into our region, and it incentivizes U.S. companies to stay here. Of course, foreign trade zones have been around for a long time. They've ebbed and flowed in terms of their importance. COVID raised the awareness of the advantages, and now with the current presidential administration, it's real a hot topic. I have a button that I got at a conference not long ago that I work periodically somewhere today, but I forgot. It's titled "Make Trade Boring Again," because it's not boring right now. Okay. So again, benefits to the Oklahoma City region, and there are Norman companies that can take advantage of these benefits. Expands the tax base, reduces trade fluctuations, and importantly, it fosters peace and goodwill. When I was addressing the Harvard class before yesterday, I asked the students, I said, introduce yourself and tell me what drives you. And what drives me right now at this point in my career is international trade. And the reason for that is I really do believe that trade is a very effective mechanism for bringing about peaceful relationships between nations. It's been turned on its head. Hopefully we can come back from that. Okay, this is 106 trade area. As you can see, it's 21 counties, anchored at the Oklahoma City Port Authority, and the Oklahoma City Alliance in downtown Oklahoma City. So that's kind of my territory, and I roam around here visiting with companies about how they can avail themselves of these benefits. So let's get to the benefits real quick. So, they are not free trade zones with one exception, and that's the first one, duty exemption. If you're a company and you're bringing raw materials in from outside the United States, you bring them into your factory. If you take those raw materials, turn it into a new product, and then take that final product and ship it back out overseas, there is zero tariffs. So that's the exemption, okay? Because again, the parts and raw materials never enter the commerce of the United States. The second one is duty deferral. As long as your product, even after it's been completed, as long as it stays in the zone, the duty is deferred, which it's a time value money, you will owe money. The duty is not assessed until it leaves the zone. Third, maybe the most important and most common, is called the inverted tariff. Essentially what happens is you're going to have parts and materials, each of which will have a duty assessment, and they will add up to X dollars, okay? You take those parts and materials, turn it into a new product, it gets a new HS, Organized Systems Code, and that's a different assessment. Now sometimes the change isn't worth the paperwork. Sometimes it's 50, 60, 70%. It's a big deal, okay? I'm going to use an example as I wrap up. So that's the inverted tariff, the reduced tariff. Next, merchandise processing fees. They're charged ad valorem taxes on every shipment of raw materials that comes into the United States. The calculation is 0.003464%. That sounds small, but when you're dealing with those commodities, it could save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. There also are benefits in terms of logistics. And two things I didn't put up here is if you buy a piece of equipment, I'm working with one client right now, they're buying a piece of equipment from Turkey. Okay? It's going to cost $750,000, and it's going to take them nearly a year to get into production because it's being built into the building. As long as that is under construction and going through testing, it's not subject to the tariffs. It only is tariffed once the switch is turned and it goes into production. So if you're dealing with a $750,000 piece of equipment with a high tariff on it, you can save enormous amounts of money. And this group is going to take 11 months to get that in production. So that's another big one. That it also, a foreign trade zone is a CTPAT, Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism best practice, which means it is a secure area, and as a result, you save money on financing and insurance costs. So let's look at these individually, real quickly. If you import raw materials, again, there are no duties. As long as it goes back out, it goes back out of the country. So, duty savings, duty deferral we talked about as well. I'm going to skip through these a little bit because I'm going to share an example, and I would like to have a little bit of a dialogue with you, if we can. And shift hands here. That's a duty deferral. Inverted tariff, again, it gets a duty reduction by changing the nature of classification. Here we go. Here are the merchandise processing fees, and that's a basic calculation. Okay, now the other advantage here is, say you're bringing in 20 shipments a week. As an example, and each shipment is going to cost you a really big number on that. That's very common. If you're in a foreign trade zone, you can go to weekly entries, and a weekly entry is topped at $651.50 a week. So you're taking 20 entries that are maybe cost you $25,000, $40,000. It goes down to $651. So instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars after a year, $651.50 times 52 weeks. See, the savings are enormous, and they're not very well known in the interior of the United States. Most of them are located on the perimeter, of course. 3 basic zone types: magnet sites, those are the industrial parks where you have multiple owners, multiple users. That's what Iron Horse is. A usage-driven site is one building, one customer, specifically for their products. Okay? A subzone is akin to a magnet site, but generally you have one owner with several different buildings and different product lines. Okay? So, let me give an example to bring this home. You have a factory. You're not in a foreign trade zone. You are bringing your raw materials into your factory from overseas. What happens is this. The parts and raw materials will stop at the port of entry. Our primary port of entry for Oklahoma is Houston. Okay? But we technically do have a port of entry in Oklahoma City as well. But they'll stop, and they won't move. Your parts and materials won't move until you've written a check out for the entire amount, delivered it to Treasury Department. Treasury Department gets around and notifies CBP, and then CBP, Customs and Border Protection, stamps it and the parts go into the factory. If, however, your factory is in a foreign trade zone, okay, here's what happens. Parts and materials get to the shores of the United States. Customs and Border Protection looks at the paperwork, throws it into the algorithms. As one of the trainings I went through years ago, when I was at the World Trade Center in Denver, he said, and yes, every white powdery substance moving from South America into a ski resort gets opened. Every single one of them. So whatever the algorithms are. All right. What happens again is they'll look at the stamp, they'll look at the paperwork, they'll stamp it, and it goes directly into your factory. You have paid 0 tariffs. 0 tariffs. You then take advantage of the duty exemption by shipping them back overseas and so on. Duty reduction. So let's say you're producing the biggest, best widget in the history of the universe. You're going to produce 100 of them, okay? And each widget it's gonna cost you $1,000 on your tariff assessment. So 100 widgets, $100,000 on the table. You take the first 30 and you ship them back out overseas, which is very common. Canada or France or Bangladesh, where it is. You just saved $30,000. Okay, so you got $70,000 on the table, 70 units. Okay, say your HTS code, your tariff assessment goes from here down to here. It says 50% for sake of the math. You just saved another $35,000. So you started off this process producing your 100 widgets at a $100,000 bill. Now you're down to $35,000. You save $65K, just like that, plus the merchandise processing fees. See, it's really simple. Well, paperwork is not, but conceptually it's very easy to do this. So those are the two scenarios on how this thing works. Again, they've been around for a long time. Okay, and so let's talk again about Oklahoma City for a moment. We're the Oklahoma City region. Oklahoma City is the center of the economic universe. The United States is the strongest economy. It will continue to be so. Okay, we're near the geographic center of the U.S. We have 3 Class 1 railroads in Oklahoma. Class 1 is one of the big ones. Okay, and on a sidebar real quickly in terms of how railroads work, which are critical. You want your factory, the sweet spot is to be on a piece of rail owned by a Class 1 that is operated by a short line operator. If you're on say a Union Pacific line, Norman's is Burlington Norman, some of the Class 1s. If your factory is right on that line, if you're smaller than Boeing, they're going to zip past you about 50 miles an hour, not paying attention to you. If, however, you're on a Class 1 rail, piece of it is operated by a short line operator, Iron Horse, operated by AOK Railroad, they'll give you 365, 24/7 service. It's the best place to be on the rail cycle. Okay, of course, Oklahoma has 3 interstate highways, multiple U.S. highways, Will Rogers World Airport, Tinker, obviously in terms of logistics. We have world-class research universities, of course, here, and world-class companies. Now, we're close enough to our southern neighbor but we're not too close. And of course, I'm referring to Dallas, obviously. Dallas is getting really expensive, and as we know, it's chaotic. So we're in a good spot as a region right now to become major players in the global economy. Okay. As I say, this looks a little complicated, but we are here to help. And I'm going to have, so that's my contact information. And I'd be happy to visit with anybody about this at length. So I'm going to talk a little bit about indigenous international trade, and then we can open up for questions. I'm part of a group, and have been for a number of years, called the International Intertribal Trade and Investment Organization. That organization began the conversation in the coffee shop at the OU Law School about 12 years ago, between Lindsay Robertson, some of you may know him, he's the emeritus professor of law, and the dean of the Thompson Rivers Law School in Cambridge, British Columbia. They then brought in Wayne Gardner-Williams, who's a good friend of mine, who now is our PAC leader, so to speak, at ITIO, International Intertribal Trade and Investment Organization. Okay? Sidebar, Wayne, based in Ottawa, is Muslim Creek, and when he was 5 years old, the Canadian government seized him and placed him in a European or Canadian white home. Never saw his father again. It was 52 years before he saw his mother again. That was just 7 years ago. Okay? So when we talk about and recreating international indigenous trade, we're talking about intergenerational trauma. We're talking about ongoing injustices and so on. And so as we are developing this intertribal international network of foreign trade zones, we have to also accept the realities that each tribe is operating within the context of larger national governments who may or may not be particularly friendly. I give a lot of talks at the World in Business forums all over the world. I was in Australia last October. Winnipeg is this October, which will be kind of fun, easier flight. And I'm working with the Maori and several other groups, indigenous groups in Australia, and even the Ainu now, which is interesting, which is the indigenous people of Japan. So it's kind of an interesting time to be engaged in international indigenous trade. It is interesting to be engaged in non-indigenous trade, but it's sometimes not very fun. And now I better not make any editorial remarks. I will leave it to say that no, I'm not in agreement with the current Trump administration's policies. I think they're bad economics, and of course, behavior is a whole different issue. And I am in very strong disagreement when the Trump administration pulled us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and turned us into negotiating individual contracts and working contractual relationship. The problem with that, of course, is when we are engaged in these international organizations, we're writing the rules. And if you look what happened to TPP, as soon as we pulled out, it became CTPP, which Canada stepped in. You see, it doesn't make logical sense to me. We don't need to get in a long, involved discussion about that. But it does fit the context, and certainly in terms of the discussions I had in Harvard 2 days ago as well, it all plays into it. So with that, I'd be happy to open up questions. I've just given you a semester in about 14 or 15 minutes, whatever it was. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
What are some of the local products that are taking advantage of this, and how do they work?
Sure. One of the first companies out at Iron Horse is a company on the far side of Oklahoma City, and they're bringing in electronic components and then combining them into making bigger parts. And so they're having to pay those tariffs at the higher rate, and those little bitty deals, gadgets or whatever that go into the bigger product, are tariffs pretty high. But once they become an integral part of the other product, that tariff assessment drops significantly. I think last time I checked, they were saving around 40% from the transition. Okay, there's several other examples. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned collections of tariffs by the Department of Treasury.
Well, yes, and then
And
Treasury.
then money go. How do we know, as citizens, after, clearly business citizens have paid, we will pay at the end.
Yes, yeah, we pay the tariffs.
What does the Department of Treasury gonna do with that?
Can I say something just a little political? My other jacket has the No Kings sticker on
No
it.
Kings.
So it kind of gives you an idea. I'm in strong disagreement with that. We do
That's
pay,
what I wonder.
we do pay the tariffs.
Yes.
They're passed on. The other companies will absorb some of it. And a small argument can say, well, it makes the companies more efficient, but I think I don't think that's a non-starter, is what that is. Yes, sir.
Dr. Collar, I have a question.
Yes.
The question is that how many companies are involved in this in Oklahoma? And second question is, what is the indigenous population of Oklahoma? What is their contribution to the free trade zone?
Okay, great questions. The first question is, I don't know the total number, but not many companies in Oklahoma are currently taking advantage. I've been hired by 106 to be the evangelist, so to speak, meaning no respect, to talk to companies about why it's in their advantage. I was in Stillwater last week talking to a company and they didn't even know they could use it. They're going to saving enormous amounts of money. So it's an educational process. We're inland. People don't think about that very much here, but companies are becoming more and more available and more aware of it. There is a company here in Norman, who I won't name, on the south side, that is availing themselves of that. And then 106 is processing several applications as we speak. So the number's growing. My guess would be maybe 30 companies, maybe 30 or 40, but don't hold me to that. Your second question, in terms of the indigenous population, the Iron Horse Industrial Park is the only one in Oklahoma. However, I am also I have another company outside of 106, and two of my clients are two other tribes, actually just yesterday, a third tribe, that want me to help them establish magnet sites and subzones on their property. Now, that combines, interestingly, with the tribe's ability to monetize their tax exempt status. If you want to talk technical tax, we can do that for a minute. So it's a growing concept. My two biggest clients are in the vicinity of the Canadian border, and we're having quite a few interesting discussions about that. That gets into a J Treaty discussion and all that. Yes, sir, in the back.
So, there used to be a foreign trade zone in Moraine. Is it still there?
The foreign trade zone designation is there, yes, but it does not have any activated sites. That's 227. They also run across the south side of the state and pick up Ardmore with the airport down there. So they are, Ardmore Air Park is part of 227, but they have no activated sites. And it doesn't mean anything to the company until they're actually activated.
So is your license to be a foreign trade zone, is it permanent or is it time period when you have to reapply?
Yes, the hierarchy, that's a great question. The hierarchy starts in Washington, D.C., and it's the assistant secretaries of several departments, Treasury, Commerce, and so on. And then they delegate their authority to the Foreign Trade Zone Board, who then grants specific locations, establish grantees that will then run the foreign trade zones. So the 106 in Oklahoma City, and they're numeric by when they're applied, okay, that is the grant of authority. Now, underneath that, then you have operators, which is Iron Horse Industrial Park. They operate the park, and then underneath that are the users where the actual exchange takes place. Yes?
In the examples, I understood you were talking about large companies and people in industry. I worked with a client who was a Native American in the 90s. And could an individual be part of this, or a small merchant be part of it?
It needs to be a company. It doesn't have to, we have one of the companies within the cages with about, 14 employees or something. So there is no bottom. It just comes down to whether the ROI works, whatever their internal rate of return is. Yes, sir.
I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you.
I couldn't help but thinking about the inverse of what you're talking about.
Please.
Worked in Bangladesh for the past 40 years.
Yes, sir.
We lured them into a foreign trade zone, where there would be no terrorists on their environment, and their whole economy started to be built around what the United States was willing to give them. And then, of course, this year, that all fell apart for it. I don't really have a question, but I'm just thinking about the fragility of some of these movements and the effects they can have on our trade policy that affects millions of people. And in that country's case, the whole economy, because it's built on one industry.
Yeah, two pieces of that. Actually, we're on the same wavelength. The first piece is foreign trade zones operate in conjunction with individual free trade agreements, FTAs. So, U.S. has a free trade agreement with Australia, but not New Zealand, with Colombia, but not, Bolivia or whatever. So there are a bunch of FTAs. So those need to be kept in context. Secondly, I began every one of my semesters in class. I teach economic development planning in the fall and environmental planning in the spring. I combine both of them. I do believe that we can have environmental sustainability and economic growth simultaneously, following the principles of circular economy, which I can come back and talk about that sometime. But that said, I lead each one of my classes and I say the most important policy question, regardless of the issue, is this: who decides? Who makes the decision? One of the first few words of the Constitution: we the people. Okay? Who's making the decision? And then normally I'll get up and do an economic continuum that relates to how much control. On one side you have, the leader makes the decision, and over here you have laissez-faire capitalism. And so the question is, where are we course, we have the most mercantilist president in many years now. Now, question is, where's the sweet spot? I would argue, based on my experience and training, is it varies left and right across the middle based on the circumstances. Okay? And I think, one more editorial comment, I'm sorry, I'll get the microphone. I think one of the things that was really hurting us right now is that these platforms we're talking about are mechanisms whereby we can make decisions concerning the control of our economy. They are not theologies, okay? And we've gotten to the point as a country where we are casting economic decisions and economic discussions in theological terms. And throughout history, it has shown us that any time, the most dangerous moments in history are when power combines with self-righteousness, right? And so one of the, and we're running into that talking about these inter-country, we used to have a wonderful dialogue in Canada. It's a little tough right now. Right? So all this is wrapped in together, isn't it? So I got off on a tangent. The point I'm trying to make is this is a technical platform and it does work. Yes, sir.
So when you set one of these up, is it like a bottom-up approach where a community decides, hey, I want to work through my congressman and try to get a foreign trade zone set up? Or is it like a top-down, we decide where we want to place these? And then as a follow-up, kind of to his point, is there any reason or any trigger that says we no longer need a foreign trade zone in this area, or we're going to shut this one down?
Yeah, it comes down to the individual application, the operator. You keep your congressman out of it, that kind of screws it up. It's a technical process. You fill out the paperwork, and then you go through the assessment on meeting all the requirements. That, and I tell people over and over again, I tell my students, don't use pronouns. They means individual companies that want to avail themselves of that opportunity. They can be subzone, they don't have to be, doesn't have to be an industrial park. Individual companies can contact the Foreign Trade Zone, okay, and then we can, the Foreign Trade Zone grantee, 106, can do the paperwork and help them avail themselves of the benefits. Yes, Bob?
Does the State Department of Commerce do anything to help or hinder your efforts?
Sort of. Well, I'm not recorded, right? I mean, I get along real well with the staff level, and the state administration has appointed some really good people. Mark Wells, I don't know, he's spent 35 years in the State Department, top-notch people, okay? I think they don't see the benefits at the same level. Perhaps, maybe I need to do more work with them. Again, I get along real well with Jesse and John and Jackie and that group. I'm not hearing anything from the governor's office, per se. We did host, I'm part of Global Oklahoma, and we hosted a reception at the governor's mansion last Thursday at noon. And the governor said all the right things, and then he was gone, and then we actually started talking deals. So the answer is yes and no. It's a question of awareness. You know, Oklahoma just doesn't think in international terms, but we should geographically, and we have a platform to do it. So you can see, that's what I asked my the students at Harvard that were very students, so what drives you? Tell me a little bit about yourself and what drives you. Of course, this is what drives me. So, thank you very much.
Here. So I'm going to put you on the spot really quickly before everybody leaves. Andrew, is that correct? Hi, Andrew Hussein, and you're from Norman North. Okay, I'm going to let you introduce yourself really quickly, tell a little bit about you, and your guest.
Hello everyone, sorry for being a little bit late. My name is Andrew, and this year I'm a senior at the Millennium High School. One of the things I'm most passionate about is working with the environment and helping put food on people's tables. I brought my mom, just let her introduce herself.
This is Tia. I'm Andrew's mom, and my daytime job is a professor in the Department of Modern Languages at OU. Yeah, so this is a really interesting presentation. aggravation, and I wanted to ask the speaker, do you need interns for your company? Who can speak foreign languages? If so, feel free to reach out to me. It's great seeing everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, we're glad to have you here this week. We'll look forward to seeing you back next week too. Okay, just remember district training is this, well, starts tomorrow, and so does the NPS banquet for Celebration of Excellence. So we hope to see you this weekend. Mr. Crandall has a announcement.
A real quick request, actually. Rick is not here. Hank, unfortunately, no longer a member of our club. Would somebody be willing to take the leftovers to Food and Shelter, Salvation Army, somewhere? You got it, thank you.
Great. And just to address Hank, Hank will pop in and out. We hope he did resign from our club. He's moved to Edmond, and so he's joining the Edmond club. So we're not losing him as a Rotarian. We just won't get to see him every week. So he says he's going to get his haircut still in Norman, so he'll stop by. So look forward to seeing him then. All right, you guys go out, unite for good, make it a great week.